Um, okay, number 19. We have Walter Skip Claypool will briefly address the board regarding his concern about NOACA and the NEOSCC.
You gonna use that thing? Well, I'm going to ask him. I have the 3 files you sent on Friday loaded up on this computer. So if you want to refer to any of those, I can turn that back on and we can pull them up.
I referred to a couple of those. I do have a presentation.
Okay.
Now, I don't have to use it.
Whatever you want to do.
I can. I'll leave it to you guys. What I did want to bring to you, though, is a copy of a letter from some trustees in Sagamore Hills. There's two different letters.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
And I have a copy. And these are opposing NEOCC. I want to, first of all, thank you for the time. I'm very disappointed Mary's not here. As president of NOACA and very familiar with what's going on with NEOCC, it would have been great for her to be here to address the issues that I'm going to bring up. And so I would ask all the people in the audience, since Mary's not here and she is the president of the board for NOACA and responsible to you, after I say what I'm going to say today, you may want to talk to Mary. I mean, she has a unique position on this board. It's not just a commissioner. She's also the president of NOACA and is materially involved with what I'm going to talk about today. And so, first of all, thank you, commissioners, for allowing me to speak. I think this is very, very important. It warrants much more time than I'm going to take today to talk about this. I do want to make a public correction on the record. I listened to the last commissioner meetings, the last 2 commissioner meetings, so I could have my facts straight, and there were some misrepresentations of things that I've said and done. I do want to make it very clear. At the executive meeting that I attended for NOACA, the executive meeting started very late, about an hour late. I was there. I had another prior commitment. I wasn't planning on being there to the extent of the time that I was there. But I was there for the first part of the meeting. I've listened to the entire audio for the meeting, so I know exactly what was said and what was done in that meeting. I did talk to Mary prior to the meeting. She showed me the 3 alternative wordings for the resolution that was being put into NOACA, and I commented to her before she did that none of those 3 alternative wordings were acceptable from my perspective, because they did nothing more than change the name from NEO 2040 to regional initiatives. And so I'm going to talk about that this morning. So there are a number of concerns that I have relative to what NOACA is doing. And by the way, I talked to Joe this morning. I have reached out to a number of other counties in Ohio who are not part of an MPO, particularly Columbiana County, because it's 110,000 population surrounded by MPOs, and they made a specific choice not to be in an MPO. So it is possible to get your roads paved, to do your bridges, and not be in an MPO. That's not to say we should or shouldn't. That's not assessing whether it's a good thing or a bad thing to be in NOACA. But it is to say that there are different approaches that could and maybe should be considered. And so, all we need to do is ask the question. Sometimes it is a smart thing to at least consider alternatives and options. I'm very concerned about what I'm seeing in NOACA for a variety of reasons. Not just what's happening with NEOSCC, but let me touch on that first. NEOSCC is a regional authority that was started with the combination with 5 different MPOs involved. Is it 5 or 4? I think it's 5. No, if you read the MAP 21 law, which I have read, it's 586 pages. I haven't read it in detail. I haven't studied it, but I have read it. And I have a copy on my laptop. I can provide anybody who wants a copy. There's a 14-page summary that is relatively easy to read. Nowhere in that federal law does it give NOACA and or the other MPOs the authority to establish a regional authority called NEOSCC. They took a $4.6 million grant to create this organization, And if you look at what this organization is doing, it is an overreach from what their authority happens to be, from my perspective. I'm going to read to you a comment. I'm trying to be brief. I'm trying to focus on a few high points to give you a sense for what is happening, so maybe that will lead to a deeper conversation, because it's very complicated and it gets very difficult to understand, but that is typical of a bureaucracy that wants to lead us in a direction, in their direction, not necessarily in the direction that the people want to go. This is what NUACC wrote in their grant application. It gives you a flavor of what they're thinking. They wrote, historic patterns of development have not led to an equal distribution of community amenities or access to jobs, education, neighbor services, open spaces, transit, and municipal programs. This has resulted in disparities in health, income, food access, education, employment options. Our regional planning effort will identify how best to deploy the resources to address these historic inequities. NUSAC said their objective was to redistribute wealth. NOACA's objective and goal is roads and bridges. They created an organization to redistribute wealth. I ask you, does that make any sense to you?
Right.
2 years ago, I mentioned to Mary and to Tracy Jameson, as a commissioner, and Dave knows this because I was sitting there, this organization is not good. We need to pass a resolution right now opposing them. I'm here today not as a political thing. I'm running against Mary as a county commissioner. Everybody knows that. But I am not here today as her opponent in that candidacy. I am here as a concerned citizen. For 2 years I've been working at this. I am very concerned at what I'm seeing in NUACC because they are about a regional plan. And you'll see in that letter a very interesting dynamic or dimension that nobody knows about. Keep in mind that this board, the NUACC board, they refer to them as NEASC, it's easier to pronounce. That NEASC board is an unelected, unaccountable board. The majority of the board, there are some elected officials on the board, but they're not elected by us. They're not elected by the people that are in our community. So they're not responsible to them. The people, the citizens in our county cannot impact who's on that board, and they can't impact their decision process. That is an unaccountable, unelected board. Sitting on that board is the Cleveland History Museum, who came in here and purchased property which was removed from our tax rolls. That is a part of the NEASC plan. If you look at their plan, if I showed you the presentation that I have, and you look at the NEASC data, again, looking at their data shows you what they want to accomplish. It is not me saying this, they say this, and they don't hide from it. Hunter Morrison, who is selling their plan, does not hide from his plan. We're just ignorant and not willing to look at his plan for the goodness in the plan. They say they want to triple the numbers of parks in our county. I ask you, would the citizens want that? Do they want to pay for that? Do they want to pay for the maintenance on that? Should we not talk about that? And what authority does NOACA have to do that? Beyond NEASC, set NEASC aside for just a second. I don't know if you read the policy document. This is the policy document that I objected to in NOACA. I sit on the policy committee. When I saw the policy document, I was a bit disturbed. In their policy document, they have phrases, and again, the resolution we passed opposing NEASC, the wording that they approved in the executive committee, which was our sole opportunity. We had one opportunity in that executive committee to thwart what NEASC is doing. We lost it because it's going to go to the board, and the board is going to vote to approve it. And yet they're hiding from that because it should be on this agenda coming up this Friday. It's being moved off until July, till after the election, I believe. That's just my feeling on it. But the wording that was selected changed NEO 2040, or changed the wording from NEO 2040 will no longer be included to we accept all regional initiatives. NEO 2040 is a regional initiative. By simply changing the name, you've accomplished nothing. Mary voted in the unanimous vote for that. I would love to be able to ask her the question, why would you vote to undermine a resolution that was passed by our county commissioners, including herself? And she voted, even though I pointed out to her before her vote that wasn't acceptable. And so the people in this room should ask the president of NOACA why it is, and I believe this, that she voted to undermine her own resolution. I'd like for her to be accountable to that. Again, setting NEOSC aside, if you look at the NOACA policies, and I'm reading this is right out of their policy, so it says they're going to work with governments in the region as well as state and federal authorities to promote cost sharing. Ask your citizens, and many of them are in this room, and many of them are in the county, if you ask them, would they be for transferring their wealth, that's what cost sharing is, us sharing projects in Cleveland, would they be in favor of that? I believe strongly that the answer to that question is no. And yet that was never addressed. And I pointed that out to the entire board, including Mary, that cost sharing I was very concerned about. I don't want my tax dollars going to Cleveland to promote some of the programs that they have going on because I don't think that they're smart programs. They also want to build on strategies to achieve regional cohesion. They're creating a regional bureaucracy in which we will have no say. The NOACA board is a regional authority in which we have 3 votes, and those 3 votes are outweighed by the 44. In essence, there are unelected, I refer to even those elected officials that are on that board, they're unelected by us. They're accountable to us, the people that are in this room and the rest of the citizens in Geauga County. It's an unelected, unaccountable board. Now, whether there's an argument, the argument may be made that we should be in NOACA because, as Joe might say, we get some money back from NOACA. I don't know if it's worth selling our soul for, but let's say I go with that argument. At the very least, we should be pushing back on many of the policies, pushing back harder on the policies, and we do nothing in that meeting. We push back on nothing. For 10 years, Mary has been a commissioner, and I'm not trying to take a shot at Mary, but she is the president of the board. And Tracy was there before, and Bill Young before, and we have never fought for a minimum standard of having 3 commissioners and an engineer on that board. Why? That should be the minimum standard on that board, to have our county engineer on that board. We've never brought that up and fought for that. Why? I asked to make a presentation to that board. I've been asking to make the presentation for 2 years. People in this room know that. I've asked Valerie McCall before Mary. I've asked Grace Gallucci a dozen times. I'm told, well, it takes time to be able to make that presentation. 2 years? 2 years' time does it take? And I have an email to document this from Grace Gallucci and from Mary saying, well, before you can make the presentation, we have to vet your presentation. So they have to agree to the presentation that I'm going to make. I consider that intimidation and an invasion of my free speech rights. As a representative of Mr. Spedalari, that's the only approval I need to get. I've made thousands of presentations in my career. The only approval I've ever had to have was from the person that I work for. In this case, because I'm Ralph's alternate, he was the person that I would need to get his approval, because we represent these people in this room. We do not represent NOACA. And so the question I would ask for Mary, if you were here, Mary, and I'm sure you're going to listen to this video, is who do you represent? Do you represent the people in Geauga County, or do you represent NOACA? And if you represent the people in this county, why are you not standing up where I'm sitting today and defending the people in Geauga County? It shouldn't be me pushing back. It should be all of you. And Blake and Ralph, you're relatively new here, so you're not as close to this. I've been on this for 2 years. And so, I'm here appealing to you to get more information. I'm going to just touch on some things today, but it's far, far deeper than this. And there is, as you can see, a statewide effort right now to educate people and wake people up. But we are fighting a bureaucratic behemoth that is funded with millions of our tax dollars, and it is very hard for a grassroots organization to fight that kind of clout and that kind of power, particularly when they will not allow us to have a seat at the table to at least have a reasonable debate. And that is all we've asked for. I had signatures of 1,000 people that I gave to Grace Gallucci. 1,000 individuals said, let our voices be heard. 450 people showed up at a forum that I formed in which we had Hunter Morrison in the room providing his case so that we could have an honest debate. All I've asked at the NOACA table is to let the people's voices be heard. I've asked Mary, who is the president of NOACA, let the people's voices be heard. That's all we ask. We're not asking to make a decision. We're simply asking for the counter side to be heard. And so I appeal to the two of you in support. The people should have the right to have their voice at that table and not have it controlled by the bureaucracy, Grace Gallucci, who is an unelected, unaccountable employee of the board. I, as a representative, Ralph's representative, who represents the people, should not be told what we can say or not say in front of an elected board of individuals. We represent the people. We represent this county. We do not represent NOACA, from my perspective. Here is the statement that I'm hoping I've asked for, the new policy statements, because the new policy statements will reflect the change that was supposedly made by the executive committee. That phrase that was approved in the executive committee, and it was approved rapidly. I believe there was a pre-agreement to that. It didn't, and I've got the audio again, which I can publish and provide to you at any point in time. It didn't take 30 seconds for them to say, we're going to pick, and it was Ed Fitzgerald's second in command, who said, oh, we should pick number one. Everybody said yes. Okay, they vote aye, and it was a unanimous vote. They voted aye. That phrase replaced this one. NOACA will work to promote and adopt strategies identified in the Vibrant 2040 plan. I'm expecting that. Well, we know that the new phrase is NOACA will also work to promote state, federal, regional initiatives, of which NEOSCC is part. People will say to me, well, NEOS can't do anything in our county without support, without doing something. There is a current list of, I forget how many properties, I think it's 5 properties that are right now in process of being purchased under a NEOS plan. Through Clean Ohio, they're getting federal funding and state funding to purchase property, large tracts of property in our state right now, or in our county right now. And how many of us know that? Do you know that? Right now, NEOS, and I have the list. It is their prototype list. They are in our county right now purchasing property, and nobody knows about it. Why? Because nobody will stand up and tell you what's going on. Because we have people baked into the system who will not stand up and defend Geauga County. Can you tell I'm a little upset?
No. Take it off the tax rolls. Yeah, that's for sure.
I'm seeing multiple references. I'm going through the presentation, and there's multiple references to cost sharing. But the NEOS has a plan, which they published, and I have a copy and I can forward it to you. It's a very comprehensive plan. It is a regional plan in which they will determine, the regional bureaucracy will determine where it's best for people to live, where it's best for companies to locate, how we will get from one point A to point B. In their regional plan, there's a rail system across the northern tier of Ohio, and another rail system that goes from Cleveland down to Columbus, all funded by our tax dollars in a cost-sharing mode. There's much more that I can go into, and I've just touched on the surface of many of my concerns. But the biggest concerns that I have right now is, even though we have pulled out NEOS supposedly out of their plan, if you look at, and I should probably plug this into the projector so that people can actually see this eyeball to eyeball. Anybody who wants a copy, this is right out of the NOACA document, so this isn't even me. There's a regional transportation initiative or investment policy. In that regional initiative policy, one of the core objectives is to revitalize the downtown core urban areas. You do not see reference to revitalizing Geauga County. All of the plan involves transferring our dollars into the core urban areas and improving the core urban areas. This organization undermines the authority of all elected officials. It is a bureaucracy that supports itself and is enabled by itself, and undermines the authority that you guys. We elect you. If I want to see a change, if I don't like the way Blake, the commissioner's office is working, I can go beat up on Blake, or I can beat up on Mary, or I can beat up on Ralph, or I can choose to run against you because I don't like what's going on. I can do nothing with that bureaucratic board. I can't fire Grace Gallucci. I can only do that at the table in Cleveland if I choose to. So I can forward more documents to you. You got to take a look at the policy document coming out of NOACA, because it's not just NEOS that's in that plan. And if you look at that policy document, I would ask you to read it under the context. Look at it through the filter of roads and bridges. MAP 21, which is the federal law that oversees NOACA and all the MPOs, is roads and bridges, basically. It includes a little bit of air and water quality, too. But generally speaking, it is our infrastructure. When you look at the policy document, you will see education, economic development, health care. NOACA now wants to extend its tentacles well beyond roads and bridges. And so I won't go on and on and on about this any longer. But I'll ask you to get educated. Look at the policy document and look at it through the lens of roads and bridges. If you consider that the federal mandate says roads and bridges, if we can't keep NOACA in that box, then I'm not sure that being in NOACA is the smartest thing to do. Because NOACA is basically Cuyahoga County steering the region. And I don't vote for people in Cuyahoga County. I don't like their values. I like your values. The people that we elect in Geauga County, I like their values. That's the reason they get elected. Most people in this room, I don't think, would really appreciate the values that we see at the people at that table when we go meet in NOACA. They're nice people. They just think differently than we do. So, I don't know. Did I send you that presentation? I didn't. I sent a presentation to Ralph, and I don't know if.
Oh no, I never saw that.
Yeah. There is a presentation that I would love to show you, and this will be the last comment that I make. Then people can ask me questions or whatever. One of the presentation slides that NEOS uses shows Geauga County as their first ring and second ring suburbs. That's how they define us. That's first ring, second ring suburbs. That's today. Now, I object to that. I don't think I'm in Cuyahoga County's first ring, second ring suburb. But their 2040 vision of Geauga County, 2040, is that first ring, second ring suburb doesn't exist anymore. Sounds phenomenal to me. Until you relate it to a comment made to me in a work session in NOACA when they were discussing goals and objectives. And the people at that table, there was the consultant, which I would have fired because I think she was incompetent. But she asked the question, what is your vision of 2040? And the people at that table said to me, our vision of this, and it was unanimous, it was Ed Fitzgerald, second in command, Lake County Commissioners, the Transit Authority out of Cleveland. The comment was, densely populated communities surrounded by green space. I don't know if you're good with that or not. I'm not. I asked the question about the U.S. Constitution. Doesn't that kind of violate the constitutional authority of giving people a place to live? If you look at the Ohio Constitution or federal Constitution, private property rights are paramount. They said that the Constitution is an old and a useless document and that we needed to do the smart thing. I don't know. Maybe I'm old. Maybe the oath that I took to uphold the Constitution shouldn't be valued anymore, but I value it. And so, that is just a teaser. I've got so much information I could overwhelm you guys with the plan that NEOS has. And I'm hoping that you wouldn't agree with much of that plan. So with that said, I don't know if there's questions from the audience or not. If you have questions, I won't go on and on any longer. It wasn't necessarily brief, but I think I made my point.
Just if you have a question, you just need to state your name first thing for the record.
Diane Jones, Auburn Township, and at the initial part of your presentation, you referenced the communication from Sagamore Hills trustees. I would appreciate knowing its contents and the identity of the 3 trustees. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, John, I'll be darned. Zaccardelli. Okie doke.
By the way, just
And
for everybody's reference here in the audience, I'll read the key point in this. They're disturbed by there's a lot that goes in the Ask Play, and a lot of it is very, very subtle and hidden. And people say, well, that can't really hurt me. But one of the tools that is used is what they referred to as a mixed-use designation or planned unit overlay district. So they have all these words that are hard to understand, get your head around, and all that kind of stuff. In essence, it is them creating a set of zoning rules which override the zoning rules in your local communities. So they will create a set of policies that will usurp the local planning authority zoning rules. And so if you ask the question, how can they be successful? Well, they're successful, first of all, because they're backed by Department of Transportation, HUD, and EPA, who have a huge amount of authority, and they have the purse strings. And when EPA sets a set of rules, a lot of people say, well, what am I going to do? I have to follow those rules. Now, yes and no, I guess. I would maybe think there's a way to challenge that. But that's how that gets accomplished. A regional authority done through NOACA with NOACA's authority, baked into and very subtly winds its way into the policies. When they're supposed to be working on roads and bridges, now they're all of a sudden doing zoning because part of the plan is, well, we've got to help people to decide the best way to get to work. And maybe that best way to get to work is mass transit, or maybe that best way to work is a bicycle. Or they have something called a multimodal study, which says what mode of transportation is best for what you're trying to accomplish.
Hey, Skip, if I can, Joe, not to put you on the hot seat, but just, a lot of this has to do with you, so you're the blame of this.
He's not allowed at the table.
Actually, I would disagree with that. The commissioners are on the board and they pay to be members of it. I don't.
No, just
with all due respect. I know you're kidding.
I'm just kidding with you on that. But your take on this as far as...
I don't disagree with what Skip said about NOACA was set up to provide funding for roads and bridges, and it seems to be a lot of their attention has been scattered in different directions, and it's not focused on that. As far as their involvement in NEOSCC, I wouldn't even see why NOACA would, with what they're supposed to be doing, why they'd even be contemplating that. I deal with NOAC on the ends of, I program my stuff that we need to get funding for. We get it in there. We get it done. Geauga County has done pretty well in NOACA, and it's really only because we're about 4% of their pot, so they kind of leave us alone. So we've received what would be considered a fair amount back, but I wouldn't disagree with what Skip has said. The direction they're going in, we've lost some voting rights on the board there as far as percentage goes in the reorganization. There's some other things that I stood up against, and when you're only 4% of the vote down there, it's hard to be taken seriously.
And as far as
and I personally am not even on the board.
When you've talked to some of the other counties, like Skip mentioned, Columbiana County, 110,000 people. We've got 96,000 here. And they're still able to fund projects and stuff like that. Have you had discussions with some of the other engineers in some of those counties to say
the ones that aren't getting funds? I haven't spoke with Bert Dawson, which is Columbiana County engineer, about this. When they talk, they still get federal funding. There's more than one pot. NOACA is not the only pot. Some federal funds go through the County Engineers Association, through the state and so forth, and then they're distributed from there. We do get those funds. So when another county says, oh, we're not in an MPO, but we get federal funds, so why are you in an MPO? Well, they're missing out on this other pot that their taxpayers are pumping gas, paying tax. It's going to the feds. It's going to an MPO, and by virtue of them not being in an MPO, they can't get that. So it's a little misleading. Certainly, if Bert Dawson has found a way to get what's going to the MPOs without being in the MPOs, it's certainly worth talking to, and I do plan on talking to him about it. Skip just brought that up to me before I walked in here this morning.
Because
Bert's been around forever. He's been county engineer down there since 1969.
Yeah. I mean, it's a situation where, and I think that, when Commissioner Rare came in December, was it? December, January, November. I mean, that was the one thing that came up as far as, with this whole, the NOACA change, because we both agreed you should be an official member on there and we should have four positions there. But my biggest position is that, I have Skip as my alternate because of the fact that he stays on top of this more than I think any commissioner would because he's passionate about it and he does a great job with this, and it's something. But my position is this: is I think that I can speak for myself, and I think that some of the comments that even Commissioner Rear has made is that if there's a way that we could get out of this, of being able to still get the funds that we need to get out of, something. I mean, we need to make the fast track to get something figured out. And if it's a situation that we can do that, I mean, I can't stand going down to those meetings. And what those meetings are basically, I feel like I'm in a state of dictatorship when I walk in there. That I'm basically like part of this regime to just basically, here it is, and this is, we're all voting this, and you don't have a choice. And if you say something else, I walk out of there, looking around because I'm waiting for a pistol to come out to the back of my head and get executed on the way out just for bucking the system. It's very, very uncomfortable. And my position is they put this new meeting room that has pushed the public completely out of the way for. And at the end of the day, is a government that runs without public input is basically a government that is just going to control you, and I can't stand it. And something, those people are like sheep that are in that Cuyahoga County that are just going to follow whatever they want to follow. Somebody dresses in a fancy suit and tie or a fancy dress and has a whole bunch of titles behind her name. They believe that that's the second coming. I don't, and I think common sense has to prevail. And if there's a way that we could, even if we can bring, whether we have to go to them or we could bring them here or start to get some discussion in place, I just think that this is only the beginning. I was extremely upset as far as with the Natural History Museum coming in here, and then we have an auditor that's also going to take that approach of basically recommending this when he's ultimately the guy that's paying the writing the checks, and it's a situation where we're going down a very, very slippery slope here with all of this land grab that's going on. And we don't have the ability as private citizens to be able to buy anything because you're competing with public dollars as the other bidder. And guess what? You're not going to win that. And I can speak of it even more because I've got a personal situation myself that I have happened to myself, and in this case it's going on right now with this. And I can tell you that it's bad. It's bad, it's bad, and it's bad. And we need to stop this. We struggle enough. I mean, Mr. Lair could tell you he's pulling his hair out. That's why he's thinning up above there. As far as our tax revenue, we're losing tax revenue daily to these situations. And nobody saw like with the Natural History Museum, they took that other piece of property that was almost $25,000 a year off of the tax rules at Bass Lake Community. Somebody made a fat check with public funds, and guess what? We get slapped in the face now. We have no tax revenue. We're worried about this whole deal with Chardon over the course of with that RID, which is terrible. But it's a situation where after 30 years, that'll be over. This is lifetime. This is our kids, our grandkids, and when you go back in time, and you look you look back 200 years ago, that 30 year is very, very detrimental to us. But when you look at what those tax rule that no taxes on this property forever, it will far exceed what we're ever going to lose with that Chardon deal, and it just continues to go and more and more and more. And it's going to get to the point that the reality is you will not be able to live in this county. Your kids will not be able to live in this county because you will not be able to support the services because somebody's at the end of the day has got to pay for it. Yep. We run a absolute, skeleton manpower county, and our employees do not make tons and tons of money, and they do the best that they can. I could just imagine what's going to happen if this continues to go and all these public funds just continue to pour into these locations. It's bad. And I just think that, Joe, we've got to figure out a way that we can try to, if there's a way that, and my concern is you, in the sense of you being able to have funds to keep our roads up to specs in this county. But, I'm very upset. I'm upset with it because I actually took the time to listen to exactly what Commissioner Claypool said about the wording on that. My agreement when I voted at this table was to take that wording out, and I am disappointed with Commissioner Samiti because you can say potato or potato and it's the same thing. And basically what we've got in there is the same thing that we tried to push and that we agreed to take out. And so I do feel slighted also with that. And it's just a situation where I think that there's just, we have to put the fast track to figure out what we could do with this. And I think that the biggest thing, and I'm not speaking for Commissioner Rear, but I think that the fast track is going to be this, is I think that this board right now potentially could have two good supporters of getting this thing put to rest and getting something figured out with this that we can just get beyond this whole NOACA deal, because it is a major problem.
Well, if I might, I want to say one thing. That we don't have 4 people. We have 3 people.
Right.
I have never been to one of these meetings. I'll be going Friday because Joe can't go. But when I came here, I felt that the real emphasis was that the engineer have a seat on that.
Absolutely.
Down there, because it's supposedly about roads and bridges. So I don't know that much about roads and bridges except if they have a chuckle. So I made him my alternate. I see, and I may be, you may want to correct me here, but I see 2 issues. I see NOACA is one issue, and NEOSEC is another issue. Okay. NEOSEC is getting their funding from NOACA.
They get their funding from the federal government.
Okay.
So they get it from the EPA, Department of Transportation, and HUD. HUD is the lead organization. They have a third organization that was created at the federal level called Sustainable Communities. Sustainable Communities is funding these regional efforts across the country, not just here, but across the country, because the federal government has an agenda to steer the states in the direction the federal government wants us to go.
Okay, so how does withdrawing from NOACA, which I can understand could have a negative effect on the money that we get for our infrastructure, roads and bridges. We may be able to get it some other way, but Skip, you've been working on this for years, and you haven't come up with an alternative way to get it. You say we can quit, and you may be right, but I haven't heard how we're going to quit. So
Well, just to be clear, and I'm sorry,
Okay.
just so I can be very, very clear, I've not said we should quit NOACA. Okay?
Okay.
I'm not sure that NOACA works in our best interest. And right now, with what they're doing with NEOSC, that's definitely raising huge concerns because it's at a huge overreach. So,
Right.
the goodness of NOACA, if we could get NOACA back on focused on rigid bridges and not this other regional stuff, which I consider nonsense, okay, maybe I could live with that, particularly if we had some influence in there, if we had the ability to be able to control our destiny through there. But
So it is two separate issues.
so
I
it's
mean,
two separate issues for me. Now,
but they're joined with this alliance that's currently in place.
I'm not convinced that our best interest, though, isn't served. I just don't know. I mean, this is not for me to decide. It's for a discussion. I'm not sure that our best interest isn't served, and maybe leaving the WACA. Maybe leaving that $2 million on average that we get a year behind is a smart thing to do, given the price that we have to pay for that.
How will that
And
affect the fact they'll still get their funding from either NOACA or the federal government or whoever? They're still going to get their, NEOSEC is still going to get their funding. And if they have the money and they come to Geauga County with their money, then it comes down to whether the property owner who's planning on moving to Arizona wants to sell them their land or not. I mean, we can't impose restrictions.
Let me just.
I don't know. I'm asking. I don't have a.
Well, it's a situation like that National History Museum. Perfect example is that piece of property on Wilson Mills. If we would have said no, they wouldn't have gotten it. And not to put you on the spot, but you said yes, Mary said yes, I said no, so they were able to move forward to get that property. If you would have said no, and I would have said no, it would have been a done deal. They would not have gotten that.
Well,
But it was part of
it was
that.
still for sale.
But here's the thing that
They just wouldn't have used that Ohio.
but they would not have qualified for the grant because part of the grant required us to approve that to be done, and that's why it's so critical for us to be able to push back on that. Because if we would have said no once, guess what? They're going to think the second time to come back, and when they come back second time, we say no again. And we say no the third time, they're going to finally stop.
Well, at this point in time, though, they're already in Geauga County buying up tracts of money using private dollars.
That's
and
what
they don't
I
have to come to this board
We
to
don't.
do that.
And I understand it,
they
but
did
that was
that
a
in that
public
situation.
dollar situation.
No, you're
If we would have said no,
absolutely right.
they would not have gotten those dollars.
That's right,
And they ran out of on the time frame on that of being they were within like 1 week that they had to do that of being able to qualify for that. And at that point, it's like, hey, and you know something? It's just like this: if they want to come in and buy it under public or private dollars that they've got, then let them burn their money, and then hopefully they'll go away.
And they'll pay taxes with it too.
Right,
Correct.
exactly.
Well,
Look-
no, not necessarily.
Look at
Not
NOACA from
necessarily
a
on
different
the,
perspective.
taxes.
Until Ralph showed up, nobody mentioned the fact that we could use alternative dollars on buggy trails. Mary continued to say, and Tracy before her, when they were together, used to say, those alternative dollars coming to NOACA have to be used on a bicycle trail. You can't do it any other way.
All right.
That's not true. The reason they thought that is because they were told that at NOACA, and they don't have. There are people who want the title, and there are people who want to do the work. They want the. I'm sorry for saying this. I'll bite my tongue. I'll bite my tongue on that.
It would be better
So-
if you didn't make personal attacks.
So I'm not trying to make a personal. I'm trying to make a statement that the elected officials, we have so many of them that do not read the bills. Nancy Pelosi, got to pass it to find out what's in it. There's so many elected officials who do not read the laws, Map 21, do not read the grant applications that come through our block grant applications, so on and so forth. And what's the outcome of that? The outcome of that is they don't know what their rights are. They're not protecting the people from the perspective of they don't know all the facts. Ralph was smart enough to pick up on it that, we could use this alternative dollars to do buggy trails instead of bicycle trails. Now, we just had a young guy killed down in Middlefield. We might have, had we been putting our dollars, redirecting our dollars there, we might have saved a life. Who knows? That's that kind of thing that I think most of the people in this room would like to see. If we're going to be in NOACA, let's at least be smart about it. Let's work with our county engineer to say, how can we be smart about this? Get to maximize our value out of that, and minimize their impact in our county. And so, again, I'm sitting here as a citizen right now asking, because who knows whether I'm going to win this election or not. But regardless of that, I'm not going away. As a citizen, I'd like to see more responsible government, and that means reading the law, reading the bills, reading the things that NOAC is putting out there so that we can thwart some of the stuff like NEAS.
Tom Jones, Auburn Township. Question for Skip. Mary, and many times here, has mentioned that over the years, over the last 10 years, we've received back $30 million from NOACA for our roads. Do you know how much money has been collected on that gas tax?
Using the county engineer, 95,000 registered cars. Joe told me 95,000 cars in Geauga County. If you do a simple calculation based on AAA averages, 25 miles to the gallon, 15,000 miles per year, we pay out, Geauga County citizens contribute about $10 million a year in federal gas tax dollars.
That's $100
We
million.
get back about 2 to 4, an average about 2 in Geauga County. So that's $20 million over 10 years that we get back, but we're paying out $100 million. I don't know. I don't think that's a very good return, personally. We pay out 28 cents a gallon at the state level, and the state, by law, and I have a document that shows this formula. The state has a formula for this. The state keeps 75%. So we get back about $4 million, $4.4 million thereabouts on our state roads. We pay in 16. Again, not a very good return. And why is it we're not getting a better return? Because people aren't focused on it. People don't say, oh, we're only getting $4.4 million. Why is this? Talk to the Department of Transportation. Talk to our state representative, John Eklund and Matt Lynch and Dave Joyce and whoever's representing us and saying, guys, we're not getting a very good return here, and see about improving them. By the way, for whatever it's worth, the MAP 21 law, which was written by Barbara Boxter, is right now in committee being revised. And so there is an opportunity for us to influence the outcome of that law, which governs how NOACA works. That's one aspect of this whole NOACA issue. We ought to probably be looking at where that's going. NOACA lobbies Washington for an outcome. I've asked for what our lobbyist is going to lobby for. Nobody in NOACA yet will tell me what our lobbyist that we pay for, all of us pay for, is going to lobby for. Are they going to lobby for us, or are they going to lobby against us? Are they going to lobby for a gas tax increase, which is what the last thing I heard was? They wanted to lobby for a 18 cents on a gallon gas tax increase. What is our lobbyist that we're paying to go to Washington? What are we lobbying for? Another aspect of this.
Now, who is our lobbyist? Is that
Virginia Ainsley.
Virginia, yeah. And she lobbies, she's a liberal person, so from whatever it's worth, she tends to lobby for what Cuyahoga County wants her to lobby for. Guess who sits on the board, the chief person on the board for the Legislative Council? Valerie McCall, who is Mayor Jackson's second in command. Which way do you think the lobbyist is going to go? I don't know. Let me think about this for just a second. Gas increase. That's what I'm betting. Let me throw one other thing before you think about it about NOACA. MAP 21 does not tell the states how to organize their MPOs. The states are free to organize their MPOs any way they want to. NOACA is unique in the state of Ohio. It is a council of governments. AMATS, SCATS, EATSCATE, which were the other ones that I'm most familiar with, are not council of governments. They're just part of the planning organization that exists down in those communities. And so NOACA as a council of governments has kind of a unique situation. And so I only bring that up to say maybe an approach with these MPOs, because if they're not working in our best interest, we've got a group of unelected officials who are kind of making decisions, steering us. I mean, again, I don't choose them. I choose you. I may not like you. I may like you. I don't know. But I don't choose them. I can impact you. I can't impact them. Maybe what we need to do is go down to our state legislators and say, this whole MPO thing's not working well in Ohio. We need to reconfigure it so that it represents what the people of Ohio want it to be, and its focus is on roads and bridges, not planning our counties, not planning how we live. And I buy a piece of dirt in Chesterland, I want to be able to live on that piece of dirt. I want to have some say over that piece of dirt without intrusion from Cleveland telling me how I've got to live, what the outcome of my water is going to be, and all that kind of stuff. So that's just another piece of thought for you. We're not out of control. We can't just throw up our hands and say, well, there's nothing we can do. It's the federal government. No, there's a lot we can do. We just haven't sit down and talked about it yet. This is opening up the discussion, and I really appreciate
the starting point, because this is where it starts.
One thing I want to clarify with the gas tax, and you can, if I'm wrong, you can correct me.
Mm-hmm.
The gas tax doesn't come from or can't be assigned to a region, a resident. It's paid at the pump. If I drive my car and I work in Cleveland and I fill my tank in Cleveland, then that gas tax is collected in Cuyahoga County, even though I live in Geauga County. If someone lives in Cuyahoga County or Medina and they come out here and fill up in Chardon, they pay the gas tax at this at the service station here, and so that's credited to the taxes from Geauga County. Joe, correct me. I mean, they don't ask me where I am when I buy my gas.
No, interestingly enough, the gas tax is a little odd in that they collect it all statewide. It goes into one pool, and then it's divided, as far as what the county would get, it's divided by 88. So the smallest little bittiest county
gets as much money as the biggest.
Yeah, it'll get the same as we do in that realm. There's other monies around and stuff, but that it has nothing to do with where in the state of Ohio you pump gas.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying.
Obviously,
we're a very wealthy county in Geauga, tied for, I think we alternate between first and second, don't we, with Delaware? But we're going to get the same return on the gas we buy as Athens or some other county.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So Joe, then
And their whole philosophy on that is the little counties that don't have a means of revenue, it at least gives them something. I'm not going to argue whether it's fair or not. It's just the way it is.
So
It just can't be assigned to the residents of a county.
Exactly. It does not. Yeah, like if you say, well, I want to help our county out, I'm going to buy gas right here instead of, before I get on 90. Well, no, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
But the point being, I mean, there's differences in how you can look at it. I'm a resident of Geauga County. No matter where I buy gas in Ohio, I'm paying tax to the state of Ohio.
Correct.
And so it makes no difference whether I buy it in Cleveland. I'm a resident of this county. And so all of my tax dollars go into this Ohio state pool.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to see my county at least return the money that I pay in, regardless of where I pay it. And I'm looking at a sheet. There's a whole formula as a PDF that you can download from tax.ohio.gov. It talks about everything Joe just talked about and how it's distributed and so on and so forth. Geauga County gets, this is a 2013 document, $2.2 million. There's percentages associated with cities and towns. Everybody gets a little slice of that pie, so to speak.
So Joe, does Cuyahoga County then just get $2.2 million?
I believe that's true.
Yes.
There's other means of funding, though. When you start talking about, Skip right now is talking about the state sales tax, and on the gas, there's not only state, but there's federal on that too. And then that gets distributed differently, and part of that's what NOACA gets, and that's all just, it's not as cut and clear as the state. Now, my personal opinion is when the gas tax was initiated, it was the best, most fair thing to do. If people used the roads, they bought gas, it went to the roads. It made complete sense. No one else could get their hands on it. People couldn't take the money and they couldn't build, well, back in the beginning, you couldn't build bicycle trails with it. Now we're seeing that's possible. So it was truly a user tax. If you didn't use the roads, you didn't pay for it. One of the few taxes in this country that made sense. You're not taking it and shipping it off to D.C. and not get it back. So it was a user tax. Now, unfortunately, what's happened over the years is as the cost of building roads, asphalt and stuff, has gone up tremendously. It rises with the cost of fuel, generally speaking. And there's more to it than that. I could go on forever, but the cost of asphalt's gotten enormous, where yet the gas tax really hasn't changed much. And the problem also being is the fuel prices rise. We're not a percentage of that. We're actually cents per gallon. So when gas went from $1 a gallon to $4 a gallon, people stopped driving as much. So when they stopped driving as much, we still have this infrastructure to maintain. So when they stopped driving as much, we stopped getting the revenue. And then what happens, the federal government stepped in and said, we're going to make the auto industry have their entire fleet has to get a certain miles per gallon. Well, by doing that,
they use less.
now they reduce the usage of fuel. Well, once again, you're pulling out of that money that should be going to the roads. And I'm not saying I'm against having more efficient cars, but everything they're doing is working against the system they set up. without them setting a correction factor in there. And then on top of it, they go and give these huge federal returns to people for buying electric cars. Well, those people are paying nothing to be on these roads. And so the whole system is working against itself. And while some more revenue to Geauga County would be good, I don't think a gas tax is any longer the answer, because not everybody that's using the road is paying into that. It's just not working that way. So, when you talk about this crazy 18 cents, well, they're talking about that on the federal level, if I'm not mistaken. Is that true, Steve?
Well, no, the form that I have, it actually has a breakdown. There's 5 different levies.
No, I'm talking the new one they wanted that they're talking
Oh,
about.
yeah, the new one, the new tax increase is a federal level. That's right.
Yeah.
They want to take it from 18.5 to
We already said
36.
we're only getting about 20% back that we pay out. So they take another 18 cents per gallon.
And so how much is that going to cost you in groceries and guns and, all the stuff that you have to buy? If you're paying 36, if the guys who are driving the trucks around pay 36 cents on a gallon, that's a huge impact on our economy. And by the way, just as a side note on this, in 1961, the MPO was established. And there was a promise made. This is part of the issue that I have with our bureaucratic system that we have set up. There was a promise made that would be used, the 18 cents on the gallon, to pay for our roads and bridges. And we agreed to that. We voted for that, and our elected officials voted, and everybody applauded and said what a great thing this was. We're going to save society. It was a great society era, so on and so forth. In 1991, President George H.W. Bush, with an executive order, said we're going to now include mass transit, environment, bicycle trails, all these other things that would take money away from the roads and dilute the money we've got for filling potholes. And so now we hear complaints we don't have money to fill the potholes, but we've got great, beautiful bicycle trails downtown Cleveland and one coming to Chardon. Now, I will take this moment, and sorry, gentlemen and ladies, we have a great county engineer. And I'm just going to give him a little kudo here because he works against all odds to take care of our roads, and we got good roads. And he works around the nonsense of the federal government, all that kind of stuff. So you can applaud our county engineer because he's doing a great job. We can bitch a little bit about putting in a bridge here and there, and cutting down a tree here and there, and all that kind of stuff. But overall, we can give great thanks to Joe Cattell. So, and I expect a big. So
You asked for a half hour.
And we got it. And I appreciate
and you're about 25 minutes over that, which is okay. I'm just saying, but we got to wrap this up before noon here. And
is there a next step? Can I ask for a next step? Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I think we need to get a hold of Columbiana and talk to them a little more.
Relative to NOAC, I'm going to be at the meeting on Friday, and Blake, you're going to be at the meeting.
Joe can't make it.
And so I have asked to make a presentation on NEASC. It is a ceremonial presentation because the board is going to pass the NEASC or the resolutions that they currently stand. And, again, I would just say we need to wake up because what they are baking into the money that we get from NOACA, it's very concerning to me. So I would like to see, you don't have deeper content. I have, tons and tons of stuff I could dump on you. I can give you the proposal or the plan from NEASC, and maybe if you've got some reading time at night when you're watching TV, you can.
We passed a resolution from this table asking that to be removed. Mm-hmm. I don't know what else we can do officially. We passed it, said we're going to be removed. We can go down and talk to people and see if we can make change. But the main thing, I see it as two different issues. There's the NOACA and the money for roads and bridges, and then there's this initiative that's a socialist initiative that I don't know how else to say it, that I think we're all against. And if we don't control, if we don't have a way to shut their funding off,
let me suggest this.
Then I don't know how you're going to.
Let me suggest this to you. We did pass the resolution, which I think was undermined by the vote in the executive committee. That that set of policies. Look at the policy statements that I sent you. That set of policies. Forget NAS. There's a whole bunch of other policies that are in a problem. Those policies have not been voted on yet. They have not been approved by the policy committee. We have an opportunity to eliminate cost sharing, to eliminate any reference to NEOSC in our county, period, whether regional initiative or other. We can make that extremely clear with another resolution or with an effort working through Mary or around Mary. But we still have an opportunity to thwart those policies because I'm thinking, and I asked the question of Grace, and she's not responded to me. That's a problem. Grace needs to respond to me. I am on the policy committee, and she needs to understand that people who are on that committee need information. But that set of policies, they need to know what the next steps are. We can thwart that policy or attempt to thwart that policy or those things that are contained in that policy if we resist. And maybe we all need to go sit at that table and say, no, guys, these policies we oppose, we're against. Forget NEA. That's one of the policies we're opposing. But if you look at the policy document, you're going to see all kinds of other stuff in there. So.
And when you go, Blake, please visit the back room where they serve refreshments and expensive coffee and muffins and fruit. And that's where you will hear the candid conversation from the people who come there. And when they don't have to be in the presence of everybody else, that's when they talk and gripe about what's going on. And one in particular is Lake County Commissioner Al Feldish. Did I get that name right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So frequent that table, see who comes in, start a conversation there. And the folks that are too afraid to speak up in public for fear they're going to stand out like a sore thumb, boy, do they gripe back there where the eats are. Just my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Somebody else?
Tom, did you have something?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Skip. Okay, for the acknowledgements.
Friday, 10 o'clock, Cleveland.
Mental health.